What's going on, everybody? It is that time again. The Sooners Illustrated Podcast, episode 137.
37.
On this Monday, December 16th, 2024. Josh Callaway, James E. Jackson, Tom Green with you on a Monday. We have good news to talk about.
Man.
What a world.
It's possible.
A lot of bad for a long time. We've got some good stuff to talk about today. A huge piece of Oklahoma's team for next season is back. They've made some additions in the transfer portal with another big one hanging out there. We will, of course, discuss all the latest there as Oklahoma trying to get that signal caller spot soon up for 2025. We'll also look ahead to next year's schedule a little bit. It dropped last week. Some early thoughts there. And we'll do a little basketball recap after both teams picked up big blowout wins over in-state teams over the weekend. But, guys, without further ado, we're going to do some transfer portal, of course, as always, in just a moment. But let's start with the biggest news for Oklahoma really of the offseason so far. Deion Burks is back. He made the announcement last weekend on Saturday evening. He did a little rope-a-dope in his announcement video where he came in and told Brent Venables, kind of made it seem like I'm going to the draft. And then he did, oh, nope, I'm coming back, switching numbers to number 4. Obviously a huge deal here, guys, right? I mean, this is, with all the turnover at the wide receiver position, you've already had 3 of the big 5 enter the portal. Jaden Gibson looks like he's going to be back, but he's coming off a major injury. So the biggest one was, can they get this guy back? And they did. Deion Burks, clearly the number 1 wide receiver on the team moving into next year. And finally, some big news and some very needed good news for Oklahoma.
Yeah, definitely needed. It had 6 wide receivers hit the portal just last week alone.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody had to come back in that room, right? But yeah, no, I mean, getting Burks back is huge. We talked about it last offseason. He was one of their most important transfer portal additions. We all thought he was going to have a big year, but I mean, he missed more than half the season basically due to 2 separate injuries, the thigh contusion and then the concussion that held him out of the last couple games. But, despite that, he finished 2nd on the team in receptions, 3rd in receiving yards, and 1st in touchdown catches still. And all 3 of his touchdown catches came in the opener. And he still finished the year as the leader in receptions. That's, probably more of an indictment on Oklahoma's offense and its passing game this season than it is a reflection of how good Burks was. But if he can stay fully healthy, I think he can be really good, especially in Ben Arbaugh's system. We'll see who else they add to that room in the coming weeks, but I'm curious if they might move him back outside instead of in the slot, because he did play a lot outside at Purdue when he had his best season 2 years ago. So we'll see what happens there. But I mean, getting him back is huge. He's supremely talented. He was on Bruce Feldman's freaks list coming into the season. A lot of people thought if he had a huge season this year, he could be a potential 1st-round draft guy.
Yeah.
And obviously didn't have the season he wanted, injuries, all that. Maybe next year will be the year.
Mm-hmm. And that's the interesting thing about this. We all assumed he would have a great season just because of the role that he was coming in as. He was going to, replace Drake Stoops in that slot spot in that same style of offense that Jeff Lebby had implemented for Jackson Arnold and things like that. With Ben Arbuckle, there's, some things are going to change on the offensive side. So it's good to have him back, especially a guy that's a veteran guy that you can count on to be there and things like that. But, you're going to see maybe a different role for him. Maybe things have changed a little bit. He's, changing the numbers. Maybe he's trying to turn the page a little bit, do some different things here. So, that's an aspect of it. That's part of it. But it's really, really good to get him back because we've seen the talent that he can bring. I mean, he has an ability to get and find the end zone and find areas where the defense isn't, and he can score touchdowns. I mean, he's proven that in the games that he actually was able to play in. So we'll see what happens with him now that, he's coming back with a different offense and things like that.
Yeah, obviously the wide receiver was a black hole last year with the injuries, and then the guys who were able to stay healthy largely not really contributing consistently. I would say even with the amount of time that Deion Burks missed this year, I still think he was probably their best receiver, maybe power rank the guys, even with him missing however many games he did.
Yeah.
I think JJ Hester might have had a couple bigger plays timing wise.
Man.
I still think Deion Burks was the best receiver among the guys that played any sort of snaps this year.
He was really productive when he was able to be out there, and it's finally some good news, like we said. But yeah, I mean, you're kind of looking at this wide receiver room now, and again, Jaden Gibson is expected to be back as well. When Gibson is right, it's another big time guy. You want to see it first. He missed this whole season with a serious injury. But if he can be anywhere close to what he normally is, you're kind of looking around like, okay, Zion Kearney year 2, got a couple of guys coming in that can maybe help you right away. Elijah Thomas, Manny Choice, Jacob Jordan, who had a nice, finished his season. Zion Raggins is still around, a couple more young guys. Like, you're kind of looking at the pieces. You can add a portal body or two. Like, this position could be vastly improved, but it all starts with Deion Burks. I mean, it's a totally different looking position with him at the head of it, as opposed to if he had decided to move on, whether that's the transfer portal or the NFL draft. So a huge win that Oklahoma just needed. You needed something positive, and they got it with Deion Burks. So a huge deal there. And you can't help, this dropped on Saturday night right as I was leaving for Paycom Center for Bedlam basketball. And I'm kind of driving over, and it kind of felt like this is the kind of news that can kind of turn your offseason around a little bit. Like, at least for the moment, it was maybe things are going to be okay. I know it's one guy, but it had been all bad news pretty much since the season ended. So to get something positive was nice and welcomed. So we'll see how he looks next year. Hopefully he can stay healthy, because when he's healthy, he's a big time player. And
I mean, things compound too. Like, you get news like this, it helps out. I mean, other guys notice, if somebody's staying. I mean, he's going over there. Maybe I'll, really take an interest in this. Let's see what happens. So that's why it's good news. And I think we're seeing that, as we see some more transfer portal entries for the Oklahoma side here.
Yeah. Do we think that video was like spontaneous, or do we think it was like scripted?
I think.
Well, see, my initial thought was like, I know they see the cameraman, but if it was like him saying, I'm going to the NFL, like, maybe he could say that was kind of part of it. Like, that's why the cameraman was there. So I don't know.
As I was watching the video, I was thinking, this is a lot of work for an NFL draft announcement. But it got pretty late in the video. It was like a minute 45 video. It was like a minute 20 in before he did the number switch. Yeah. Also, the number switch is it's like clean slate. We're forgetting this past year.
Back to his Purdue number.
Nick Anderson moved on, so that number was vacated. And there you go. So big news there for Oklahoma. And we'll see what else they can do in that wide receiver room. Obviously missed a couple of targets, but a couple other ones still hanging out there they've been chasing. And obviously Colin Kennedy's been all over it with transfer portal updates. Continue to monitor there and become a VIP subscriber as Oklahoma looks to make some more additions to that room. But the biggest one they can make of the whole offseason is this, keeping Deion Burks around for another year. As far as the transfer portal goes, Oklahoma fans have been making the jokes everywhere. So far, since the window opened, 20-plus players have hopped in, and they had only made one addition until today, which was a punter. Jacob Ulrich from Kennesaw State, which –
very good.
He's a good get.
He's a good punter.
He's a good punter, but it optically is just the worst when your only addition is a punter.
Yeah.
But that changed today. They made it the second pickup with Luke Baklenko from Stanford. This is a guy that Colin and I talked about on the podcast last Thursday. He was in Norman for a visit. He was in town on Friday. I'm not sure when he left, but he was in town at least on Friday. And Oklahoma stepped up and got this done. He committed to Oklahoma earlier today. It's a guy who we talked about last week. He's played 2 years at Stanford, appeared in a lot of games as a true freshman and made 5 starts, appeared in 10, 11 double-digit games this year. He's got multiple years of eligibility remaining, still has his red shirt. I mean, this is a guy that can help you probably this year, but also at the very least is a depth piece that's got multiple years to work with in his career. This seems like a really nice ad for Bill Bedenbaugh. And again, kind of like Deion Burks, just getting some momentum. And now they're on the board here with an offensive line which obviously they need help at this spot. And they get one here with Luke Baklenko.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how he fits in.
Me too.
Like I said, he started, I think, 9 games at tackle for them.
Yeah, right tackle.
Stanford. 10 appearances overall, played 650 snaps, gave up 4 sacks. Solid guy, not. I don't think he's a program altering type of guy, but I think he could be a good depth piece. Curious to see what other moves they try to make in that offensive line room, especially. If there's any more attrition, right before we started recording, Eugene Brooks hit the portal, so they had another guy leave there. Yep. Obviously losing a lot of guys, seniors and a few other guys to the portal already. So I think that they still need to try to add, at least one high-end guy if they can, afford one and B, get one to jump on board too. But I like this pickup. I think at the worst, it's a nice depth piece. Oklahoma obviously going back to that Stanford well that worked out so well for them, 2 years ago.
I like the what I saw in Colin Kennedy's story, like 627, total snaps at right tackle. I mean, that's that's pretty good. I mean, a guy like we talk about the left side of the offensive line. It's kind of it's getting more solidified as we're seeing down the stretch here. So that right side is what really is like the focal point, and that type of production or just experience there can help out a lot. So I really like that. And I mean, you look at the quotes that he gave, it shows that Bill Bedenbaugh is still highly touted as the development guy. So like keeping Bill Bedenbaugh a part of this staff obviously can help you out still. So like that, this was part of it. So it was really good to see that.
Yeah, we'll see what else they do here in the portal. They're chasing a couple other tackles on that offensive line that we talked about last week. Corey Robinson, Georgia Tech, Derek Simmons, Western Carolina. So we'll see what happens with those guys. As it's currently constructed, you would think he's right in the mix to start at right tackle, with assuming Logan Howland is at left tackle. But you have options now. I mean, Jacob Sexton can kick outside. We'll see if they can add another guy or two, like I just said, with Simmons or Robinson. Like you're giving yourself some flexibility. Obviously, just signed Michael Fasusi. I mean, you're giving yourself some options and some depth. It's a good get. And we'll see where he fits in. Like kind of Tom said, that'll be kind of ironed out over the spring and going into next year. But certainly seems like, again, at the very least, it's another viable body for you that you can throw out there and feel like, he's played at the college level, got a lot of snaps under his belt. It's a good get. It's a nice add. As far as elsewhere in the portal, we mentioned they added Jacob Ulrich, the punter from Kennesaw State. They get Baklenko today. But the big news on the portal side for Oklahoma today really isn't even one of these guys, one of the commits, or Eugene Brooks hopping in. It's someone from another program hopping in John Mateer. So Washington State quarterback John Mateer is in the portal officially. That was from our Matt Zenitz and Chris Hummer earlier today. A lot of speculation here, the last really since Ben Arbuckle got hired. Even before that, really, we kind of going all the way back to the instant reaction whenever they fired Seth Luttrell. We talked about Ben Arbuckle and the John Mateer possibility. And now it seems to be it's not done yet, but it looks like it's close, right? I mean, we're moving in this direction. He's now in the portal. Ben Arbuckle has obviously been hired. He's been working. They're making additions on the offense. A little temperature check for you guys as far as this goes. I mean, things look to be trending very, very positively for this to happen. And him hopping in the portal today certainly gives Oklahoma fans a lot to be excited about. We'll keep a close eye on it as this looks like it probably is going to get wrapped up pretty quick. But big news today for Oklahoma there is it looks like maybe they've got their guy in the quarterback portal cycle here.
Yeah, I mean, you got to reel him in at this point, right? I mean, we've talked about all the chips that Oklahoma has in its favor. Ben Arbuckle, proximity to home. Oklahoma on Friday just hired, another one of his quarterbacks coaches from Washington State and John Kuzinski.
Yep.
The pieces are there. It's coming together. You got to get him on board. I mean, look at what he did this year. Like he's got 2 years of experience in Ben Arbuckle's offense. So that is already huge. He's got 2 years of eligibility remaining, so he's not just a 1 year rent-a quarterback. He threw for 3,100 yards, which was 16th in the country. Completed almost 65% of his passes. 29 touchdown passes, were 5th in the country. Just 7 interceptions, 9 yards per pass attempt, which was 7th in the country. And then you add in what he did with his legs: 826 yards, which was 6th among all quarterbacks. 15 rushing touchdowns, 13th nationally, tied for 5th among quarterbacks. Like, this dude is a playmaker. I know we've talked about him on some other occasions, kind of a, Baker Mayfield light. Almost seems like he's kind of got that, competitive edge to him. And again, you just cannot overemphasize the familiarity and experience and comfort that he has in Ben Arbuckle's system. So they can get him on board. It makes things look a lot better for what the outlook for this offense can be in a must-win year.
And I know he's rated as the number one transfer,
number one overall player in the portal.
In the portal. I mean, just listening to those numbers, just think about if he didn't play in the Pac-2 or whatever it's called right now. Yeah, I mean, just imagine where he'd be at. Like that type of production is just something that's just not usually in the portal. So it's a really, really good situation because you should have the leverage here to land John Mateer if you're Oklahoma. You have the offensive coordinator. You have a couple of coaches, as Tom just talked about, that have joined Ben Arbuckle and Norman. So, I mean, it's a good situation. It's a good situation, and you're hoping that this wraps up pretty quickly. If it lingers on, that means maybe some other teams are really getting involved here. So you want to try to get this done pretty quickly and solidify everything that you think is going to happen with him coming to Norman.
For sure. And, I've talked about it a few times throughout this whole process, there are almost certainly probably more talented, just pure quarterbacks available that Oklahoma could make a run at if they wanted. But the fact that John Mateer is a veteran guy who's played a lot, and he knows Ben Arbuckle. He's been in that offense. That's so valuable. I think that this has always been the way this was going to go for Oklahoma. I think the fact that OU has not even been in on any other transfer quarterbacks is very telling about their confidence in the way that they felt like this was going to go the whole time. Because Brent Venables said himself, we talked to him last Friday after practice, they're not going to go into next year with 2 quarterbacks on the roster, a scholarship quarterback. Like, they know they need to add a quarterback, and yet no offers have been extended to any quarterbacks. No visits have been made from any quarterbacks, because this is how it was going to go all along. At least that's certainly how it's seen. So we'll see how it goes. We'll keep an eye on it just in case. I mean, Colin, again, has been reporting all over it. Our Washington State site has done a phenomenal job as well, providing updates consistently on all the latest here. But he's in the portal, and it's up to Oklahoma just to kind of close the deal now and lock this thing up. And it'll be between Mateer and Michael Hawkins, who is sticking around. They'll kind of battle it out for that job, throughout the spring and next fall. So
which is what Hawkins welcomed. I mean, we all saw the clips and things like that. We were talking to him, was a part of that scrum and things like that. He's very adamant about it. Like, obviously we need another person in here, and I really want to compete. That's how it should be. So good to see that. Good to hear that from him.
Just feels like the momentum is shifting a little, right, for Oklahoma. It was so bad in the portal for the first week. It's like, okay, they got an offensive lineman today. Their quarterback that they have been, he's in the portal. Like, things are moving a little bit positively.
Yeah, and we should add, ask Brent Venables on Friday how many guys that they're hoping to add in the transfer portal. He said 8 to 12, but that's not a hard line number. There's going to be some flexibility there based on some other movement. I went through the roster and kind of did the math this morning based on guys that we know are returning, guys that we know are leaving, guys that have already hit the portal, who they've already added. And after the Gene Brooks departure, I believe they are projected at 104. The cap is obviously 105 on
there you go.
Roster total.
Right there.
They're at 76 scholarship guys, or 75, one of those two. I got it mixed up after the Brooks departure. Yeah. But they got about 10 scholarships available. And keep in mind that number does include close to 30 walk-ons right now that are still on roster. And Brent Venables said, on Friday that, a lot of those walk-ons are still trying to figure out what's next for them. But they've been given the option to stay with the team through the bowl game. So I think we'll see some more movement in the next, 2 weeks after we get through the bowl game and stuff. And some of those guys start finding, landing spots, because Oklahoma's only going to be able to give out 20 of those walk-on spots.
Yeah. And like you said, I mean, just again, doing basic math there, if they have 9 scholarships available, but only 1 roster spot, walk-ons. That's where you clear out those spaces. And so we'll keep an eye out for that, as Oklahoma, a couple portal additions already, and seems like more to come here in the very near future. As far as next year, we're kind of looking ahead to next season a little bit, talking about Oklahoma's next quarterback. We did, in the midst of all the craziness, the SEC released next season's schedule. Haven't got a chance to talk about it yet. I figured I'd bring it up today. If you guys had any overarching takeaways from this 2025 slate, I'll run through it real quick. We already knew Illinois State and Michigan at home to start, and then at Temple. That's been established. Auburn comes to Norman for the SEC opener, which we now know is the return of Jackson Arnold. He announced he's transferring to Auburn over the weekend. So that'll be fun for obvious reasons, as the first SEC game will be Jackson back in Norman. So that'll be interesting. They have a bye week after that. Kent State at home before the Texas game. They go to Columbia to take on South Carolina. Ole Miss at Tennessee, bye week, and then they close with at Alabama before back-to-back home games, Missouri, LSU to end it, which will be the return of Bauer Sharp, who transferred to LSU in the last week. Any big takeaways from the schedule? I mean, obviously, we already knew the opponents. We knew where they were going to be going, because it's just this year's slate flipped. But actually seeing it laid out on the screen, on the sheet, whatever, is there anything that stuck out to you guys as far as a noticeable benefit, bad, whatever?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things. You touched on the Jackson Arnold coming back to Oklahoma there in the SEC opener. That one's obviously going to generate a lot more interest than that matchup might have otherwise for a team that went 6-6 and one that went 5-7 this year. look, the SEC didn't do Oklahoma any favors with its schedule in 2024. Did them at least one pretty solid favor heading into 2025. After that Auburn game, Oklahoma has a bye week. Then it plays Kent State. Then it goes to Dallas to play Texas in the Red River.
Mm-hmm.
Texas has to go to Florida the week before the Red River rivalry.
Yeah, in Gainesville. Yeah.
That ain't going to be an easy game, especially the way Florida's been playing this. I mean, we don't know anything about how any of these teams are going to look 9 months from now.
Yeah.
But Florida's not an easy place to play a road game at, and then having to turn around and get up for a big rivalry game. So that is one little thing going for Oklahoma's favor this time around. Also, first SEC road trip isn't until week 8, I guess, South Carolina, or week 7. Yeah, that's pretty far into the season for your first true SEC road game. Obviously, they go to Temple early in the season as their other true road game at that point, and then November's going to be make or break.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you start at Tennessee, then you get a bye week, then you go to Alabama. The saving grace is that you're closing with back-to-back at home against Missouri and LSU, but you still look at those 4 teams. That is a very difficult November slate to get through.
Yeah, and that was my takeaway. November is going to be tough. Like you really have to get the ball rolling early on in the season. This time around, you got to build some momentum to help get you through that back half, because it's tough down the stretch. And I mean, it used to be championship November in Oklahoma. You want to get back to that, being a thing. Mm-hmm. That's a tough schedule to go through in terms of trying to get the championship, that championship aspect of the postseason and things like that. I mean, it's rough. I mean, and then there's always the obvious, Jackson Arnold coming back with Auburn, things like that. I mean, there's a few takeaways, and I know Tom's already hit all of them, so I won't talk too much about it. But it's like that's what I saw for sure.
Yeah, I talked a lot this past offseason and in the summer going into this season about the runway. The 3 games to start, where they were going to be big favorites, chance to get to 3-0 and kind of get everyone's feet wet a little bit before Tennessee came to Norman. They didn't really take advantage of the runaway, right? I mean, they won those 3 games, but it was not pretty. We kind of went to Tennessee. They were 3-0, but it didn't feel good. Yeah. And it played out how we kind of all thought it might after the way the season started. It's kind of the runway part too. It's not as easy necessarily, but OU's going to be favored in their first 5 games. I mean, you are set up to be 5-0 if the team can be what they are supposed to be. Now, I don't want to diminish Michigan or Auburn coming to Norman. Those are not gimmies by any means. Those aren't the equivalent of Illinois State and whatever else. But they're like I said, they're going to be favored in all 5 of those games. And it feels like if you can take care of business at home, I mean, if you just win your home games, which again you're going to be favored in all of them, that's 8 wins right there. And then you try to see what you can do the rest of the way.
And you're assuming that John Mateer's on the roster where you're saying they're favored. Yeah, because
they'll be favored.
I was going to say at this point, are we sure that Michigan wouldn't be favored?
That's what I'm saying. Michigan might be.
I don't think so.
They were a little bit better than Oklahoma this season record-wise. They beat Ohio State in that game. I know Oklahoma's got to win over Alabama and all that stuff too, but I mean it's close.
I bet OU be favored at home.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
At home,
at home changes things, obviously. Yeah, for sure.
But you got a chance to be 5-0. I'll put it that way. I mean, you're in. It's not handing you 5-0 by any means, but you've got a very reasonable to be 5-0. And if you lose any of those first 5 games, it would be disappointing to lose them. So that's a great way to start the season. And if you do that, you're going to be probably in the top 15 at least going into that Red River game. And then again, you kind of see where the chips fall from there. So getting off to a good start is going to be paramount again, because if you lose that Michigan game in week 2, I mean, you're smashing the panic button right out of the gate. So that's what stands out to me. And again, we already knew those first few games, but just looking at the way it kind of has unfolded with Auburn at home, then the bye, then Kent State at home, it's like, man, we could get to middle of October before we really even know just how good the team is. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, they'll be sitting with a nice, pretty record and a good ranking, in the middle of October. So that was just look out to me.
It is crazy. They open with a FCS team in Illinois State, and that might not be the worst team on their schedule.
Temple?
Kent State. They went winless.
Oh, you're right. Kent State.
They were by far the worst team in the country this year.
They go 0-12?
Yeah. Only thing that went 0-12, dead last in SP+, all that stuff. Don't know how they would have done against an FCS schedule, but it was not a pretty year for them.
You know,
I
they
didn't
came
like
to
that.
Norman in 2022, Brent Venables' first year, and kind of gave OU a game. It was like, I think it was like 7-0 at halftime or something weird like that. They ended up pulling away, but
Yeah. I didn't like that the Kent State game is so early on the schedule. Like the SEC, you're supposed to get that late season, non-conference opponent, and I mean it's pretty early. I mean,
first weekend of October is somehow even weirder than the November, I think.
Yeah. I was gonna say that Kent State team in 2022 though was actually like pretty good because that's when Sean Lewis was still there.
Yeah, Colin Schlee is the quarterback.
Yeah,
he's at Virginia Tech now, I think.
Yeah, they've fallen off since Sean Lewis left for Colorado, and then what is it, San Jose State that he's at now?
I think so. We'll see. It's kind of crazy. We got schedule and
got some Kent State talk going.
We look at Kent State, breaking down Kent State. We're a little preview of the game preview.
Yeah, sorry, San Diego State is where he's at.
That's right. San Jose State has got Ken Niet. I'm not going to try and say it. Former Navy coach.
Yeah,
I'll butcher it. So yeah, look at 2025 a little bit, and Tom's got some thoughts on the website as well. If you want to dive more into the 2025 slate a little bit as we look ahead to next season. Let's close out with a little basketball to wrap up the show here. Both teams had games over the weekend. Tom and I were at the Paycom Center for Bedlam, and James at the Lloyd Noble Center yesterday for women's hoops against Oral Roberts. We'll start with the men this time around. Bedlam on Saturday night. It was really cool environment, really good crowd in Oklahoma City. First Big 12 SEC Bedlam basketball game, and Oklahoma just whipped them. It really was not close. They're now 10-0. They actually slipped in the AP poll down to 14 today, which is kind of funny after you have a dominant blowout win in a neutral site over Oklahoma State. But they're playing good basketball, Tom. We were there. This game was not competitive, and I don't think Oklahoma State's anything great. They're in a rebuild of their own. I'll say first-year head coach and Steve Lutz, but they thumped them. This was a really good showing. Sam Godwin was an animal. The guards continued to be really good. What were your takeaways? I mean, Oklahoma's playing good basketball, and it's crazy that 1 year after they were 10-0 going into the jump man, they are 10-0 going into the jump man again.
Against a ranked opponent again.
Yeah. Not North Carolina, basically in a de facto road game this time, at least.
Yeah. I think my big takeaway here is that if Oklahoma can get even close to this version of Sam Godwin, it is going to fare much better the rest of the season. He I don't want to necessarily say struggled through the first month of the season, but I mean, he had some games where he was in foul trouble where, he wasn't, putting up some of the rebounding numbers that he was that first, 2 weeks of the schedule. But when you have him do things like he was doing in the short roll against Oklahoma State, rebounding the way he was, diving for loose balls, just being active in the paint there on both sides of the floor, like, he changes, he gives another dynamic to this team because, we've talked so much about the guard play and Jeremiah Fears and, Kobe Elvis and, what Jalen Moore's been able to do. But if you can actually keep Sam Godwin on the court and look, you're not going to get 20 and 14 from him every night, but if you can get 12 and 8 from him, 12 and 7, you'll feel a lot better about how this team's going to fare against some really tough competition inside in the SEC. Starting in 3 weeks. But yeah, I think that was my biggest takeaway. Like you said, this game wasn't close. They led by as many as 27. The 15 points at the end was, Oklahoma State scored a little run in the final 2 minutes. But yeah, I mean, Jeremiah Fears still good. He's gonna be doing that in a lot of NBA arenas for a long time. Jalen Moore just again patient and doesn't force the issue and then just kind of explodes when they need him to. Basically it, man.
Yeah. No, I continue to be really impressed with the guard play. Jeremiah Fears, you can tell, he's always been confident. I mean, we talked about challenging Trae Young back in the summer, but you can tell he's starting to kind of realize like, oh, I'm just really good. Like I can hang in college basketball and I'm still awesome. And not a lot of guys can guard me. He's kind of starting to get a little bit of an edge to him. And man, those early games, those bye games at the beginning, not that Kobe Elvis and Duke Miles were bad, but I certainly didn't leave those games thinking like, they were still a question mark for me. How are those guys going to translate? And we still have to get to SEC play, but those guys are both balling. Kobe Elvis has been really, really good. Really, since Atlantis, he's just kind of rode that. He was awesome.
Aside from the McCaslin game when he was 0-5,
I'm
That's
counting.
he bounced back. He tied his career high with 5 3-pointers in this one. So
he was excellent. Duke Miles has been really good as well. You know, Bryson Goodine is coming in and hitting threes off the bench. And like you said, Sam Godwin was fantastic. You know, Glenn Taylor is a perfect, like, he's Jalen Moore light. I mean, he comes in and he's the bench Jalen Moore, basically. Like, he can shoot the threes a little bit. Like, I like this team a lot. Now, the unfortunate part, and we talked about this a few times, until you get to SEC play, you have to kind of take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, because we literally did this last year. They were 10-0 going into Jumpman literally a season ago, and they're in the exact same spot this year. Now, I certainly think this team's better. I know, Tom, you do as well, and most people do, but you want to see it. And they come out right out of the gates in SEC play. They go to Tuscaloosa to start. Alabama looks like a wagon. And then Texas A&M is their first home game. Texas A&M just beat Purdue in basically a road game on Saturday. So, like, the SEC is extremely unforgiving in hoops this year. Go figure.
8 teams in the top
they
25
come right out with 2 top 15 teams in the first 2 games. So we're going to learn a lot more about this team soon, but they're playing ball. They're playing ball. They're a good team. This looks like this should be the group that gets Porter Moser back into the tournament finally. And he's so good in tournament settings. You kind of just, who knows from there, right? It's March Madness, but they're playing good ball.
I thought the good thing. Go ahead, Tom.
I was just going to say the one thing about the Michigan game this weekend, it could be, if Oklahoma wins that game, it will be their first ranked on ranked win since February 2021, I believe.
And they beat ranked teams because
they've beaten ranked teams. But they've not beaten a ranked team as a ranked team.
As a ranked team.
Yeah, they beat Arizona, who was ranked. Just a few weeks ago. But you're right, as a ranked.
Yeah, I was going to point out, you guys were talking about Jeremiah Fears and his confidence early. The good part about them playing at Paycom is seeing his range for sure. Like, he's doing step back 3-pointers from NBA range and knocking them down. I mean, that's pretty good stuff, man. Like, it helps him out too. Like the other NBA agents and people are seeing that. Like, that's not agents, general managers are seeing that. And like, oh, okay, I see you.
He's
it was good to see that.
This is it. Enjoy it, because this is it.
He's soaring up the draft charts, man.
Yeah,
a lot of guys got him in that 17 to 24 range right now.
It's nuts. Yeah, this is it. He's one and done. He's gonna be gone.
See how he holds up in SEC play, but
for sure.
Yeah,
playing a ball. 10-0 and Jumpman this week. Michigan on Wednesday night in Charlotte, and then they come back home for a couple of bye games before starting SEC play. As for the women, James, you were at the Lenovo Center yesterday. They housed Oral Roberts, who came in playing good basketball. They were 7-2 coming into yesterday. Yeah. And I mean, I had this game on my computer, kind of off the side watching NFL, and I glance over and it just kept getting worse. Like, they were up 30 in the blink of an eye. Team's playing good basketball. They have one loss. It was an overtime to a good team. I mean, they're playing really well. I'm excited to get them into SEC play also, but you were there yesterday. I mean, the team is rolling right now.
Yeah, I mean, I was just talking with somebody on the staff beforehand. They were like, if we don't really show up, like, Oral Roberts could be like a trap game situation because they're pretty good, and they're really, really good in those one-on-one situations. They have really good ISO players, and Oklahoma just on defense, like, shut them down completely. Like, it was like that was the best defense they played this year, and it kind of spoke like what Jenny Baranczyk was saying after the game was like, I really, really like what we did in the first half, and really changed the things because it was 49-19 at halftime, guys. Like, it was over early. Like, it was over. Like, OU had already shown that they could be, that good, and they did it again against Oral Roberts and a really good team, And so Reagan Beers finishes with a double-double once again, 14 point, 10 rebound, double-double for her. And Zaya Van just, like, continues to improve and continues to show confidence out there with 14 points, as the second leading scorer on this team. Like, I couldn't even have thought, like, she would be this good this fast. Like, she's just – it's incredible what she's doing. Like, she looks incredibly confident out there, and like, it does not matter at all. Like, it's really, really cool to see from her. Like, she's going to take the reins from her sister Skylar. Like, she's going to be the next one. Like, it's crazy.
They're really fun to watch. They're playing really good basketball. I'm excited to get them into SEC play. Their SEC opener, I've talked about a few times, is Texas in Norman. Yep. I'm planning to be there with James. That game's going to be awesome. Just like the men, they've got Jumpman this week. That's a men's and women's event. And they also play Michigan, who's also ranked. Michigan's number 20 in the poll that dropped today. So another big test coming up in a couple of days. They play on Tuesday, so tomorrow. They play tomorrow night. So another big opportunity for them. They've got some nice wins under their belt, but that's another chance on a neutral site. Those types of games, neutral site against good teams, those are really big resume builders whenever you get to the tournament and you're trying to improve your seed.
Yep.
So that's a big one for them. I look forward to that game tomorrow. I'm sure, and James will also have a coverage of it. But that'd be a fun one tomorrow. Any early thoughts there as far as tomorrow? I mean, that's another big game. Michigan also 9-1.
I mean, I kind of asked Jenna Bronchik about that. Like, she was like, "This is the type of defense we have to play because Michigan is a little bit similar to that, but obviously, a better team, a better opponent." And so you, especially when you go on the road and to neutral sites and things like that, and play teams like this, you have to play defense that way. And she was like, "That's why I really like what we did and shown that we can do that, and we can really learn, more about ourselves in that aspect." And that was really good from them. That was really good. I mean, can't say too much about it. It was hard to even ask questions after the game because they played well in every area, even shot 11 for 15 from free throw line. There was nothing to really nitpick about their performance overall. So it was one of those things.
Playing good ball, and they'll be in the jump man tomorrow night also against Michigan. Same pretty much schedule as far as they've got a couple bye games and then they start SEC play. Just the flip. They get Texas at home, then they go to Tennessee, whereas the men start on the road and have a big home game. Good stuff on the basketball side. Finally, some good news on the football side. More to come. Again, become a VIP subscriber. Oakland247sports.com. We've had tons of portal content there every single day, both intel as well as kind of what we're hearing as far as guys entering the portal and everything. We've been all over it, and more to come. Keep an eye out for all the latest as far as some additions. We expect more movement this week with some more guys coming on board. Maybe a quarterback there and John Mateer. If that comes down, keep an eye out for maybe an instant reaction show as well. The next pod will be on Wednesday this week. Colin's got state championship football down there in Texas, so we're going to do the show a day early on Wednesday. So keep an eye out for that. We'll pick his brain on all the latest portal targets and movement there. Nobody better to talk to about that than Colin Kennedy. So keep an eye on that for Wednesday. As far as football interviews, more to come tonight, Monday evening. We're going to talk to guys. That'll be the last time we talk to guys before the Bowl Media Day down there in Fort Worth. So be sure to tune in later on today on the YouTube channel and don't miss those. I think that's it. We'll see you Wednesday for the next edition of the Sooners Illustrated podcast. For Tom Green, James D. Jackson, I'm Josh Callaway signing off for now. We'll see you next time right back here on the Sooners Illustrated podcast.
See you.